Hello everyone, welcome to SMT Call. Today we are going to learn about Azure Resource Group. So at first we will see what is the definition of a resource group. Then we will see that how we can create a resource group in Azure portal. Then what are the operations available that we can perform under the resource group. And then we will see that how we can delete the resource group. Okay. And once we are done with this, then we will see what are the benefits, key benefits of using Azure Resource Group. Then we will see some key points to remember about Azure Resource Group. So let's quickly begin. So let's try to see what is a resource group. So if you, in short, a resource group is a container that holds related resources for an Azure solution. The resource group can include all the resources for the solution or only those resources that you want to manage as a group. So what that means, so basically it's like a container, right? So suppose you are developing one website, and in your website you can have multiple components, like, so you may have some database where you are processing the data, okay, and you may have some probably backend server. So you need basically app services if you want to deploy your backend services in the Azure, or you may have some key vault to storing some secret values, and you may have some storage account. Okay, so these are all separate Azure resources. Okay, what Azure Resource Group will do, it's a kind of container. So you are going to add all these individual services under this container, and this is kind of a separation. The separation logic, you can define it your own. So I can give you one example. So suppose I told you, right? So you are developing on website, and in your website you have this component, and you have multiple environment. So you have one environment development where developer used to test the code and all. So that's the development environment. Then there might be another environment called int, basically where your integration testing will be done. So that will be a separate environment. Then again it will be production, okay, where the actual user will use your website. So what you can do, we can create three different resource group, and again that resource group will contain corresponding resources. So it's a kind of separation based on your environment. So you can separate it according to your department or country, anything, right? But this is the logic of a resource group. Basically it acts like a container, and it has some certain benefits that we will discuss later. So you can check this diagram also. So yeah, so at first it's your root account. Then in your account you may have multiple subscription, and resource group is always associated with a subscription. It should be associated with a only single subscription. So one resource group cannot be part of a two subscription. Okay, so you can see, yeah, under a one subscription you can create multiple resource group. Okay, so this is how the resource group looks like. Okay, now let's quickly go back to Azure portal, and we will see that how we can create a resource group. So I already logged into my Azure portal. Now I will click on create a resource. Yeah, now let's quickly search using a resource group. So basically in this particular page you will see all the resources or services available in Azure. So you can easily search. So we are going to create resource group. So I will search using resource group. Yeah, so you can see that this is the result we are expecting. So yeah, now you can go through the overview and plans and user information and support also, and you can check the reviews also here. Okay, so now let's quickly create the resource. Yeah, so while creating, it will ask you some information that it will ask. I already told you, right? A resource group is associated with a subscription, so you need to choose the subscription. So I have only one subscription, so I will choose this one. And now you need to give some name. So suppose I have one website, like personal website, something like that. Okay, so personal web. Okay, and what I can do, so I have multiple environments, so I want to do it for my development environment. So I will append dev. So you can name it according to your convenience. So let's do it like this: personal web dev. So all the dev related resources will come under this resource group. Okay, now we can select the region. So you know that Azure offers multiple regions. So for this example, let's select West India probably. Okay, now I will come to this region later also. Now click on next. Now we can define some tags if required. We are not going to define tags for this tutorial. Now we can see our validation is passed. Now we can create our resource. Okay, so now you can see our resource group is created. Now I can go to my resource group. Here we can see by default it will not contain anything, right? Because we have not created any resource under this. But this is how it looks like. So you have multiple options, right? You can so, and the one advantage of using resource group is you can provide and you can manage the access. So suppose in your resource group you have multiple resources and you can manage the access using the role based access. Okay, so we will discuss that later also. Yeah, you can use the locks. So you can lock one particular resource, read only lock or delete only lock, something like that. You can see the cost and you can even see the logs in resource group level. So if you're in your, suppose you have multiple microservices deployed as a app service, so you can see all the combined logs inside in the resource group level from this log section. Okay, and even you can export the template basically. So I told you, right, so we have one, so I created this for dev environment. So for dev environment I have 5 resources, like as I told like database, key vault, storage account, like this. So similarly, what Azure will do, it will create one schema JSON basically, and using the JSON you can create similar kind of resources in other higher environment, like for integration or production. So I think that is another advantage. Okay, so this is how, these are the features that are available and under Azure Resource Group as of now. Okay, so and if you want to delete it, you can easily you can click on here in 3 dot and you can delete it. So now let's try to, since this resource group has no resource right now, so let me try to open a resource group that I already created earlier. Okay, so if I open this one, you can see under this resource group we have multiple app services. You can see I have one app service plan, I have one app service where my application is deployed, it has one SQL server, even it has one manage entry. Okay, so these are the 5 different resources under this resource group. Okay, so as I already told you, I can define log here. I can, if I want to delete, so if I click on delete, basically it will delete all the resources under this resource group. So this is another advantage. So I don't need to go to individual resources and I don't need to delete one by one. If I delete it in resource group level, then it's deleted. Okay, so this is how you can do the delete, and I think this is a very good advantage of using resource group. So you can see you can define logs here also, right? So I already added some logs, so the delete option was not enabled. So yeah, delete log, read only log, like that you can create logs and you can lock a particular resource group. Probably I will make some another video for this locking thing. Okay, so I think this is how the Azure resource works. This is how you can create Azure resource and you can see the logs or you can perform certain actions. Okay, so now let's go back and see what are the key points that we need to remember about Azure resource group. Okay, the first thing is, when you create a resource group, you specify region. Okay, so whenever we created, we choose West India, correct? So what that means, so as I told you, it's a kind of container. It will contain different Azure resources. So these metadata will be stored in this particular location, whatever we choose during creation of our Azure resource group. And suppose I have already 5 services. Now I want to add one key vault probably, or Azure function. This is a new resource, right? So whenever I will create this new resource under this resource group, my default location will be West India, since my location of resource group is West India. But this is not mandatory that you need to create under this. You can, by default it will be selected, but you can choose different region. Okay, easily. So yeah, you can see that it is the region where, so basically as your resource group region, it will contain your metadata. But you can see the second point, however the resource group themselves can be in any Azure region. By default it will be West India while creating, but you can change it to any other region, Azure region basically. Okay, now the third point, each resource must be in one and only resource group. So suppose I have created one key vault probably. Okay, so this key vault will be part of a single resource group A, not with B. So one resource group cannot be part of a two resource group. One resource cannot be part of a 2 resource group. So it should be always with association will be always 1-to-1. So one resource group should be part of a one resource should be part of a one resource group. Okay, but we can move a resource from one resource group to another. So initially I created one resource under group A, but if we need, we can move that to resource group B. But again the association will remain 1-to-1. That particular resource will be associated to group B. That resource, whatever we moved earlier, that resource will not have any association with resource group A. So that is the another thing that we need to remember. Okay, the next point is, you can group resource in any way you want. That I already discussed, right? we can group the resource based on our environment, like integration, production, pre-prod, development environment, or we can do it by department. So suppose in your company or in your organization you have multiple departments, so you can create separate resource group for separate department. Okay. And we also can do it by application level or country level also, right? So these are the key points that we should remember about resource group. Now let's quickly see what are the benefits of Azure resource group. So as I told you, the first one is the role-based access control. So we can define, right? So suppose if I go back to my resource group and if I go back to overview section, so suppose as an admin I can assign, I have multiple developers, but I want that particular developer should have access to this particular app service only. So that whenever developer will open this resource group, it will not be able to see the other resources under this resource group. He or she will see this particular resource only, right? So this is one advantage. So you can configure that under this access control settings. So you can define the role and everything there. Okay, so this is I think a very good advantage. The next one is administration is much easier. That I already told you, right? So if we want to delete, it will delete all the resources under this resource group. So this is a huge administrational advantage, right? So you don't need to go to individual resources and you don't need to delete. So you can manage all the resources from a single page. Okay, from here you can see the logs, you can delete and everything, right? So that is another advantage. The next one is the cost management is easier. So now let's see how we can see the cost and all in for Azure resource group. So I can open the cost analysis. Here you can see the total cost analysis of all the resources inside this or under this resource group. So yeah, as an admin you can see all the cost in a single page. Okay, you don't need to go to individual resources and you don't need to check the cost for that particular single resource. So you will get a fair understanding from this Azure portal. You can see the cost here. So it is showing all the cost of all resource group under this, all the resources under this resource group. So you can get an overall idea, right? So forecasted cost and total cost till now, this thing. So I think this is another advantage. Yeah, I think that's pretty much for this video. If you like this video, please do subscribe to our channel, and if you have still some question, you can ask me in the comment section. Yeah, thanks for watching. Bye bye.